Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. We're well into autumn. We're starting to see some fall color show up at the leading edge. It'll only get brighter, nicer as we progress through this. So you're out in the native landscapes. You've got your sumacs going into color, that bright orange and reds. You're seeing the sycamore just getting a tinge, just starting another couple weeks. It'll be in full glory. Just all that bright gold, those huge, big sycamore leaves. The maples are starting to show just a tinge. Cottonwoods are definitely starting to drop leaves. So we're in autumn. It's right on time. There's a couple things you should do in the yard as you see this season progress. One is fertilize everything in the yard. This is the most important feeding of the entire year is right now. So before Halloween, you really need to fertilize everything in the yard. And you're going to use a nice granular food. So it's something you're going to put down over the rock, around the roots, through the gardens, just sprinkle it on. And nature will take care of the rest. It'll finally melt through as we rain, snow, as you irrigate, as things happen through the end of the year. It will slowly penetrate through the roots, and the plants will pick that up, store it in the root structure, and that's the food it's going to use for next spring's flower buds and leaf buds. It is so important. I mean, I can't emphasize it close to enough. If you want lilac blooms, forsythia blooms, if you want fruit tree food, blooms or fruit next year, if you want anything to show off next spring, you really do need to have this food. Your plants, you've been watering like crazy. It's been hot, and you've depleted the food that was sitting there around that root ball. This is not like the Midwest where you've got 8 foot of topsoil. You've got millimeters, if any, topsoil. And so the plants use this soil up. They use the food up stored in that layer, and they can literally run out of food. And so they can starve to death. Or you'll get smaller fruits, less flowers, no flowers. Lilacs are notorious. It takes a lot of energy to produce that huge flower that comes up on those lilacs in March and April. And so you need to fertilize it. And what do you fertilize with? 744 all-purpose plant food. It's an organic food I put together years ago, and it's cottonseed meal, it's some bird guano, some iron, some sulfur, just a magic mix that really is made for this elevation. And it's organic, so you're not going to poison yourself with a bunch of synthetic, petroleum-based fertilizers like a turf builder, some of those things. A lot of those they release so quickly, they go through that root zone so fast, the plant doesn't even have time to pick the food up. And so it's super important. Take your time, many times. It doesn't have to be this weekend. You should feel some urgencies, but as we progress closer to Halloween, you should feel the urgency. So just take when you're in town, you need something to do, spread it out, just put it in a hand spreader. And I just whirl it around. I just kind of go, here, be happy, be comfortable, go to bed, rest well, my landscape, and then bloom for me next spring. And so that's one. If you've got, people are surprised, we can actually grow azaleas, rhododendrons. What else? Deutzia. What else is like an unusual? Daphnes, gardenias, these fragrant, beautiful flowers. If you want those, they're typically spring bloomers. Again, you need to fertilize now to increase that bud. So your lilacs, they're forming buds right now. You can fertilize them now. You'll increase the size of that flower bud, and it'll kind of keep getting larger and larger until finally it erupts with new color, that fragrant, intense lilac fragrance in March, April, depending on your elevation. Also depends on north, south, east, west. Of course, your east exposures will bloom a little bit earlier because you get that morning sun. They just start to take off. So fertilize now. The other one to watch, don't prune those spring blooming plants. You're going to fertilize to increase the flower bud, and then you go in, or you have your landscapers go in, and they hedge things back, and they cut off all those flowers. And so you don't want that. So you fertilize now, enjoy the blossoms that come the first of the year. I mean, jasmines will start to bloom January, camellias, 1st of February. Then it's the forsythia, the 1st of March, and it's lilacs right after. Just progression of beautiful color that happens. Well, they're forming their buds now to show off in a few weeks, literally from now, or a few months at the latest. Those plants will start to bloom. If you're pruning them, you prune the flower buds off. It won't damage the plant. They don't care. Well, actually, they do. They like to bloom. They're bred. They just feel better about themselves and others when they bloom. So enjoy the flowers, fertilize them now, and then watch what you're pruning at this point. Right now, the only pruning I'm doing, only cutting, is I did cut back some of my big hedge plants maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And the reason I did that, they were just getting overgrown. I mean, they were just taking over. Oh my gosh, they're in the walkway. They're taking up the patio. I'm going, okay, that's it. You got to keep in your bounds, cut it way back, fertilized it. So it will start to have some new growth. So I get rid of some of that butchery cut Dr. Seuss look. I want it to look more natural. And so I cut it back aggressively, fertilize it, and it just will start to elongate before the winter really hits it and shuts it down. Doing some of that. I'm pruning back like grapes. They're done blooming. Not heavy, just those tendrils started to take over. They're up in the trees. They're going, okay, guys, listen, I love the grapes. I've enjoyed them, but you can't be taking over the entire garden. Come on, just selective. I'll do heavy pruning on those midwinter. I don't feel a hurry to do that. I want it to turn that color. If you prune back too soon, it needs that photosynthesis as it reduces, how do I explain this? As the foliage turns color, it's actually storing up the starches down in the root structure. So it's super important to let them go through that process and then rake everything up, clean up at that point. Also, if you're doing heavy pruning now, so a lot of folks go, oh, we need to prune the roses. No, you don't. Not at this elevation. Down in Phoenix or California, that's what you do. You do it by the end of the year, actually, like in the next few weeks. Here, we don't do that. We let them go through that fall color. We let them hibernate, and we keep the structure up of those roses through winter because it actually insulates and protects the heart of the plant. If we do get a harsh event, there'll be a couple kind of cold spikes and whoa, it's pretty cold. Oh my gosh. If you leave the structure up on those plants, it takes care of them and insulates them. It just kind of watches after them. It's something unique for the mountain area. So in the Midwest, you're cutting things back real heavy, especially borderline things, and then you insulate them. You're just trying to cut them back so you can make them smaller, so you can insulate them and protect them. Here, we don't do that. We get cold, but we don't get that cold. We don't get crazy Chicago cold. That's why you're here. It's nicer here. It's 4 seasons, but it's super mild. And so just enjoy the season. Enjoy the fall color. I know it's kind of messy. It's part of the whole gardening thing. It's a good life lesson. You'll kind of learn how to just live with the foliage as they drop. By the end of this month, it'll be full fall. By November is kind of the prettiest color. That's when the Japanese maples, the Bradford pears, ornamental pears, they start to turn color. All your fruit trees will be in full color. Just a pretty progression of plants. The most important thing I can tell you now, whether it's azaleas or camellias or rhododendrons, fertilize. I cannot emphasize it enough. If you want big flowers there's nothing showier than a rhododendron that's just in full color. The intensity of the color there's nothing like it. Maybe crepe myrtles come close in the summer, but for spring blooms, azaleas and rhododendrons, they've got it. And you fertilize those to increase that flower size and have more of them. So you have brighter color next spring. We have a lot going on this show. We've got Lisa Lain coming in with your garden questions right after this.
Autumn is the most beautiful time of the year in the mountains, and Waters Garden Center has the brightest trees.
We've collected 700 hardy trees, including maple, aspen, ash, and oak.
Each is ready to plant, so you can enjoy brilliant fall foliage in your yard.
Shop online at top10trees.com or visit us in Prescott.
Trees are brighter at Waters Garden Center in Prescott and online at top10trees.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lane, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lane and the Top 10 Gardener podcast. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show.
And we are back with Lisa Lain in the studio. She comes each week with your garden questions. Just what are your neighbors talking about? And can we learn something from them? So, welcome to the studio, Lisa. Glad you're here.
Good to be here.
It is good to be here. Fall, It's here. It's autumn. It's like the favorite time of the year. Well, it's a little warm,
but a little toasty one.
Yeah, but it's not. Rains are over. You can always complain about hot or cold, but the trees are starting to turn. It has that. The days are a little shorter. The evenings are just so beautiful. My gosh.
The mornings.
Gorgeous. Yeah. So you've been hiking the Dells lately. How has that been?
It's colors are starting to turn. Some of the native sumacs and things out there are starting to turn. So fall is in the air, whether the temperature gauge agrees or not.
A lot of these things, they're just it's by day part. Right. So those shorter days, it's not temperature, it's the shorter days, they turn.
Daylight hours. Yeah, definitely. So yes, fall is coming. We see it in the neighborhood. We were noticing the sycamores in our neighborhood were starting to turn color, and I didn't look at our maple out front. Is it starting to turn yet?
Not yet. It's always later. Another week or two, it'll be out there. So what kind of garden questions do we have this week?
Yeah, so we've got some questions. The first is from David out in Chino. He says they're pulling some of their summer veggies, squash, and that kind of stuff. He wants to know, it had powdery mildew and some other fungal stuff. Can those go into the compost pile, or is it better just to throw them away?
Yeah, David, don't do that to yourself. So if things are diseased, don't compost. Things that are diseased, it can come back on you is what will happen is they sit there and they just kind of fester underneath all the compost. And then you go spread that or put it out in your next year's garden. And it frequently can spread. And so I would say, if in doubt, burn it or throw it away or do something, but don't compost it.
Yeah.
If you got it up, I mean, technically, if you could get it up to the right temperature, it would bake all that stuff. But did you get it all? Did the whole thing get to the right temperature? I don't know. I just kind of go throw it away. Get it out of the property. Yeah. So David, pull them out. You make room for your winter veggies, your broccolis and cauliflowers. It's time to plant those. But don't take those old pumpkins and covered in powdery mildew and spread the bad stuff.
Okay. All right. Next question is from Lynn. She was here at the garden center and saw some yuccas with some yellow blooms, different from the red yucca we see everywhere. Her question is, can she grow them in containers? And if so, she wants to know how often you would need to water them. And then also, what would be the best soil type?
Sure. So great question, Lynn. That's a classic look to have. You're seeing that on the front of architecture magazines, landscape magazines, a southwesterny kind of spiky type, agaves, yuccas. And then they have it in this beautiful bowl or glazed pot because it's so striking, so different. You just kind of go, ooh, what is that? And so, yes, you can absolutely grow these things in a container for years to come. So we've got a golden agave that's in a gold pot, mustard colored pot. It comes down to the back patio area. And it's been there for years and years and years. It blooms, it does all that stuff. It's just bright, colorful, cheerful, and you hardly have to do anything with it. How often do you water and what should you plant it in is the question. So we do have a cactus mix. That's probably ideal because drainage is key with some of these succulents, cacti, yuccas, these real drought hardy, tough plants. Now, with that being said, we planted ours in water spotting soil just because that's what we had. And it's doing just fine. It's a good soil that drains very well. What happens is cactus mix will actually have some pumice in it, some larger particles that allow more air to be inside that structure of the soil. They're going to like that. And so you're probably going to water it, I don't know, once a week through winter, because we're starting November or so right now. We're watering ours every 3 days, a couple times a week. I think it's pretty good. So kind of monitor it, that kind of stuff. When they're in bloom, they take a little bit more water than when they're out of bloom to keep that beautiful flower up there. And so you kind of monitor and change it. That's that garden thing. You're nursing plants along as they need more care. You give them more. When they need less, you give them less. And so it's just communing with your plants. Now, yellow or red, what's the difference? Nothing.
Color.
There's no blonde or brunette. It's redhead or blonde. It's just, that's the same thing. So the yellow is quite striking, quite different. And if you've got a lot of dark colored rock, that kind of stuff, I think that gold flower shows up better in the yard than, let's say, a red does. It kind of more earth tones. And so there's a place for both. In fact, get one of each. There you go.
Solve the dilemma.
Yeah. I would say minimum size, Len. I'd go with maybe a 14-inch or bigger size, because this is a big plant. And so it might look a little empty at first. You could dress it with some pansies or just put some flowers around it until it fills in next year. But eventually that yucca is going to fill up the entire pot all by itself and bloom and bloom and bloom for years of enjoyment.
Yeah.
Good question, Lynn.
Yeah. Next question is from Susan. She says, my crepe myrtle is done blooming. It has all the little bally things at the end. She wants to know, should those be trimmed off now? Do you leave them on?
Yeah.
What do you do with those?
What do you want to do with them, Susan? I mean, just like if they bother you, they're seed pods. So all crepe myrtles do that, of these clusters of beautiful ornamental, they're like ornaments. I would say keep them on, enjoy them. It doesn't help, doesn't hinder. Just if they bother you, they'll kind of scrape right off with your hand or take a snipper and just snip them right off. So crepe myrtles will do that late summer through fall. They'll hold those actually through winter if you let them. So they're quite striking, especially when the snow comes. It's just pretty. It's part of the decor of crepe myrtles. And so I'm very excited. We've got some new varieties of crepe myrtles we're looking at right now, not for next spring. So we got a grower that just, it pays to know who your friends are and who grows the best of each crop. And we have got a grower for crepe myrtles next year. It's going to blow everyone's socks off. Nothing in Arizona will be like it. It's just, I'm so excited.
And they actually grow quite well here. I had a customer the other day who was surprised that you could grow crepe myrtle here. He's like, I didn't think you could. And I'm like, there's some beautiful
I think there's
ones.
on 7-8 plants. So that's us. So you're great. Just in full sun. Give it heat, give it sun. You'll get more flowers. And so the more sun, the more flowers you get. So the secret with them is, hot.
Hot heat. They like it hot.
They do.
Definitely. All right. I think we have time for one more. Ooh, this is kind of a long one. Maybe we'll go to another one. We'll wait for next week on that one. Okay, we'll talk with Doug. He was looking at the Kinnikinnick manzanita. Wants to know how well that does in a very hot spot for a ground cover. And then also if there's anything else you would recommend for a hot, sunny ground cover.
So manzanita, it's natural here. Of course, it's going to love it. Go for it. The more heat, just hot. It's great. I'd say you're fine. Now, what else can go with that? Now, manzanita or kinnikinnick is a low growing ground cover type of manzanita. It's classic red bark. Evergreen has got the bell shaped flower. It's just, you've got different heights of manzanita. It's a big group of plants. So it's going to adapt well. what can go with it or companion plants. There's also a native cotoneaster that grows here. There's a ground cover version of that. It's called Coral Beauty. There's actually icolts. There's several that are more prostrate or ground covery type of cotoneaster. And so it's very much related to the native ones you see growing out in the forest when you're walking around. So plant those. And of course, juniper. It's a native, there's native junipers everywhere. So they're going to adapt really well in that blistering hot. That's one probably come in. We'll give you the grand tour. We've got an entire section of just knee-high and below ground covery kinds of plants that are going to be your people. You want to look at those. That's where the cotoneaster and the junipers come.
Easy for you to say.
That is it. We are out of time. So Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Feed your plants now for bigger, brighter, better fruit in spring.
Water's 644 fruit tree food is safely organic with added calcium for sweeter fruit quality.
Far safer for your pets and birds than those chemical fertilizers the box store sells.
And it's kinder on the environment, too.
Simply sprinkle on the soil and water it in.
Bigger, brighter, and better fruits in spring.
Get yours today at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Natural, safe, organic.
You're listening to Ken Lain, aka the Top 10 Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Family Garden Center. Listen daily as he answers the top 10 questions of the week, streaming on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Garden Show with garden expert Ken Lain. Join the conversation daily as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Or visit face-to-face throughout the week where he can be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So the cycle that garden centers will go through, especially in the mountain areas, not so much Phoenix or Tucson or California, but more the 4-season garden center that's open year round. What happens is we'll clear out all the spring and summer stuff. So the things that have been at the garden center are cleared out. We liquidate all that stuff. And then there's a stock up mode that we're going through now through October. Literally, we've had 2 semi-fulls of plants showing up, and it's that winter mix. And the reason we've got we feel the pressure is we're bringing in plants now. They're beautiful, so that they can harden off. So they go through the same cold cycle, they go into winter on our cycle. And so they're not coming in from a warm area, a real cold area, and just all of a sudden shocked. So if we get them in here early and they kind of process through and they slowly go through that hot days, cool nights, and they get to that winter mode. And so it's usually October 29th through the first week in November. We'll have our first frost. We'll have our first heavy freezes by the middle of November. So we want the plants in here so that you can plant them and they won't have any transplant shock. And so there's a strategy for healthy plants. That's how we do it. And so we bring them in, we spray them with some anti-desiccant. There's a spray called Wilt Stop that we coat the foliage with. So it kind of keeps them from shocking out in our climate. So it just kind of makes them healthier. But now is the time when you will find the prettiest spruce trees, the biggest, chubbiest pine trees. You get these cute little Christmassy looking trees like Alberta spruce. You're seeing a lot of evergreen. The hollies are unbelievable. Oh my gosh. This is before they were pretty, but now they're full berry and they're chubbier. They're fuller. They've matured. We've gotten a couple extra flushes on them. We've been able to shape them so that we have big, chubby, full hollies. And so you're seeing that now. And so you'll see a unique mix of plants at your garden center now, or at least here at Waters Garden Center now. And that's the reason that we're doing it that way. There's a cycle, there's an ebb and flow. We have to commit to all of winter's project. Most of the plants that we're going to sell through winter, we need to bring in now so that they can be acclimated, is what we call it, or transition into our cold climate. And so we're having the computers tell us, okay, you're going to need 50 evergreen trees, and some of them will be this, and we'll bring them all in. So you've got a great choice of plants now, and they can all be planted now. If you're planting now, you just have to, you need to make sure you plant them right. We can show you how to do that, and then water them. You can't just plant once, give it a hose, and then it goes all winter with no extra care. You will need to garden or care for those things through winter. But if you do that, you're setting the stage for a tremendous growth, spring elongation or spring candle growth on those evergreens. They're going to take off and you'll have way more tree, more shrub, a better, healthier plant next spring by planting now, because they're going to root out through the end of the year. They're going to set their buds. So you'll see these little buttons on the end of your conifers, the needled pines, needled trees. That's what's going to elongate and give you next spring's new branch structure. So you get a fuller, and the beautiful thing about evergreens, they don't just do growth on the top. It's 360. It's from the very tips to the very bottom and every branch all the way around. It's putting on this nice, new, colorful growth that it puts on. And so there's an advantage. If you've got a new house and you're just closing on things and you can't move in until Thanksgiving, you're fine. We'll have enough evergreens to be able to plant, or enough winter mixing things. We've brought them in, so they're on our cycle, so you can plant them. We plant year round here. We never close down. And so that's how we will do that. So we've got plants. They may ebb and flow, the mixture sometimes, but we'll have the right plants for the right season and conditioned the right way. So for your success, as long as you plant them right and you water them through winter, you're good. And watering, don't go crazy. Really, you're watering normally through the middle of November. Then you'll kind of back off as things slow down. We get cooler. You don't have to water as much because it's just not hot. And so maybe you're watering a couple times a month. Give it a good deep soak, and that's enough to keep things healthy. Keep the moisture in the structure of the plants, so the new buds can keep forming for your plants. And so if you do that, you will have, starting the end of February, typically we start to see daffodils in bloom. We start to see forsythia going. So the very first of the year, spring 2000, is coming. And so you're planting now to set the stage for that spring growth. But the garden center is transitioning into lots of holiday, evergreeny, that mixture of plants. This is when you see some of the best choices, and the plants are fuller because they've had a whole season's worth of growth. They're just spectacular. You open up the trucks going, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. They're also so pokey. So you end up with we call it a spruce rash on your hands, kind of poke on your arms if you're unloaded a whole semi. But it's kind of fun to watch. I like the seasonality of garden centers. Keeps it interesting. We have more in store for you. Be right back after this. Water's October companion plants that grow well together are blaze maples, spicy mums, glamour kale, and burning bush.
Water's compact burning bush is a neat, well-behaved shrub prized for its blazing red foliage in the fall.
Looks great when planted with autumn gold sumacs, lilacs, and gold euonymus.
At 6 foot, this bush makes a natural hedge that burns red through autumn, all for $49.
You'll find the showiest shrubs here at Water's Garden Center.
Siri, give me directions to Water's Garden Center. The Top 10 Gardener, your source for timely garden advice, seasonally correct for the garden, guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
And we are back with Lisa Lain in the studio. She comes each week and just shares her garden insights. That different, you talk to 10 gardeners about any given idea, you'll get at least 12 ideas. So I think it's good to hear some creative companions, that kind of stuff. So we give this segment to Lisa each week just to kind of share. So it's just not me the entire hour every week.
That's probably good.
Yeah, it's very good. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So what do you got for us this week? What's going on?
Well, we discussed earlier about fall. Some of those fall colors are starting to show
yeah.
up. And I thought we would talk about some shrubs or plants
Perfect.
that can give you that real pretty fall color out
Perfect.
in the yard.
Yeah.
So the first one I thought about is the heucheras. So
Oh,
heucheras
going
or coral
perennials.
bells.
Perfect.
Well, there are just so many. I told our guy, I said, find me some pretty fall colored heucheras, things that give us that look. And he brought in Ruby Tuesday,
Ruby's good.
which is a real pretty, kind of more, a little more reddish overtones, but the color is fantastic on it. Siren Song Orange,
Ooh, orange and red.
which is a great fall color. And then Northern Exposure Amber, which is a little bit lighter color, kind of has a burgundy on the back side of the leaf and more fall orangey color on the top side of the leaf. So it's actually
Sure.
really
Two
pretty.
bicolored.
Yeah.
One color, I hear red on the bottom and red,
Right.
orange on top. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So heucheras are amazing little perennials. They actually do quite well in a number of locations.
Oh, yeah.
Do great in containers. Be really pretty. Some heuchera mixed with some mums or
Yeah.
grass in there. So just gorgeous. I actually love the colors on
Perennial.
those.
They're going to come back for years and years and years.
Mhm.
So once and done. That's a great thing about perennials.
Right. You don't have to keep replanting all
Yeah.
the time. So some others that do really pretty. So right now we have a Tuscan Flame Heavenly Bamboo or Nandina in. The Tuscan gets about 4x4, somewhere in there, but it has a real pretty dark red leaf to it. So in the fall and winter, especially those in the full sun locations, they get some really striking fall color. So there's Tuscan Flame, there's Plum Passion Nandina, which
Gonna
gets
be
more
purple.
purpley,
Yeah.
and it gets a little taller. And then there's Gulfstream,
Traditional.
which is about a 3x3. But there's also one called Firepower
Okay.
Nandina. So Firepower actually has a little bit bigger leaf. It's more of a lobe, a rounded leaf,
Yeah.
as opposed to the pointy ones. But they get red in the fall.
Yeah.
Just red, red, red. So they're kind of green, good part of the year, but that fall color is just
The new growth
wow.
even comes out with some new colors. So the
Mhm.
new growth, it can bloom some white flowers sometimes. It's evergreen. Animals don't eat Nandina or heavenly
Right.
bamboo.
Mhm.
Heavenly bamboo, your grandparents grew. That's a great big one. Gets above head height. It just gets a monster. These shorter, newer varieties, they're dwarfing them,
Mhm.
and so they get about hip high or so, maybe chest high. So they're half the size and 3 times the brightness in the
Mhm.
sun. So and through winter, so they're evergreen, but they aren't evergreen. They're ever red,
Ever color.
orange. Yeah, they're always the foliage, but the foliage changes depending on
Right.
how long the days are.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that they've come up with some new varieties because a lot of people go, oh, like you said, my parents had those, my grandparents. Well, these are newer, they're better behaved. They also would do really well in containers.
Yeah,
So,
very much.
barberries. So right now we have a couple of different ones, and we have the golden ruby, which I really like because it's kind of a burgundy color, but it has a yellow outline on the
Yeah,
leaf.
variegated.
So it just
Red
it's
and
very
gold.
striking. It really nice little shape. I think it's golden ruby is like a 2x2, I
Yeah,
believe.
knee-high.
We got some lava nuggets, which have a real dark burgundy leaf to them. They get a little bit bigger, but just really nice fall color out there. And yes, they are going to go dormant, but you get to enjoy them
Yeah.
and their coloring before
And the
they
leaves
go.
are so small, they just
Right.
wisp away.
They
Just
do.
kind of blow away. Just no cleanup. It's really great. Barberries are awesome.
They are very, very pretty. Some of the bigger bushes would be the dwarf burning bush. And even though it says dwarf, it gets 6 to 8 foot tall and wide. It's green, has a dark green leaf to it, except for in the fall where it turns that bright red.
Yeah.
And boy, you see it. There's a couple on our street that has some, and it's just like boing, and you just see it. It's
There's nothing
beautiful.
that colorful all at once.
Yeah.
So burning bush is a classic. And then even when it loses its foliage, because it is deciduous, that the bark up and down the stems are like, it's like cork bark or something. It's really cool. So an interesting plant with or without foliage.
That is very true. So the sumac, so the trilobata, which is kind of the native one for here, Gets a really pretty kind of orangey color
Oh,
to
yeah.
it. And there's also tiger eye sumac, which is what, about 4 foot tall?
Yeah,
would
just
you
below hip high
say?
or so. Three,
Yeah.
4 might be a bit optimistic. Yeah, it's about hip high or so.
Yeah. There's a bunch out by the Costco.
Yeah.
And every fall you see them just turn
Yeah.
this beautiful mass of orange and yellow, and very, very striking. So we've got those. We also have the Amur maple. So Amur is a great maple. If you don't have room for an autumn blaze or a red maple, an Amur behaves itself. It gets about 12 foot tall, probably 10 to 15 foot wide, but you can always shape it and
Yeah,
keep it whatever
easy.
you want. But it gets that really nice fall color like your red maples do,
Yeah.
without taking over your entire yard.
The nickname for that is flame maple. So it's
Mhm.
a amber maple, flame maple, same thing. I think of it, it's the same size as a Japanese maple,
Mhm.
but it takes the full sun. It
Right.
likes the dry, it likes wind, it likes neglect, it likes, whereas Japanese maples, you look at them wrong in this climate and they start to suffer, whine, complain, shed leaves. They're just big crybabies. Not
Right.
an amber maple is bulletproof.
Right.
So
Right. Speaking of Japanese maple, so we do have some coral bark Japanese
Right.
maple in, which they kind of get a yellowy fall color. But the
Right.
great thing about them that is so striking is their bark turns this really bright red
Yeah.
color in the fall and winter once those leaves drop. So spectacular, even without the leaves on it. You'd think it'd be like, what is that? But being a Japanese maple, it definitely wants that shade in
Shade
in
is
the
a secret.
summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Then we've also got in a great collection of hollies.
Mhm.
So, and I love hollies too for fall and winter because you get the berries on
Yeah.
them.
Oh yeah.
So we got, I think I wrote it down. Oh, look at me, I did.
There's a dozen varieties out there. It's
There's
great.
a
And they're all in bloom. They
bunch.
all have berries on them. It's
They
pretty
got
cool.
the berries, and there's Gold Coast, which gets about 6x6. So it's a variegated
Yeah.
yellow and green holly. The thing with the hollies is they're fairly slow growing, when you
Yeah,
say.
they are very
Yeah.
much easy to maintain.
They do like a shadier spot in the yard. They can take that morning sun, late afternoon sun, but they want some shade out there in the
Yeah.
yard. They also do very well in containers, especially up by front doors if you want something evergreen up by your front door.
Yeah.
So we got the Goshiki holly, which is a really pretty, it's actually a false holly, but I love the color on it because it kind of turns more pink in the wintertime. And you're about to tell me I'm out of time. I know.
You got 1
You're
minute.
rushing me.
Close. You're getting close.
Okay.
Just gonna wrap it up.
We also got some sky pencil holly. So
Ooh, that's neat.
those would be really pretty in a pot by a front door because they get tall, but they stay narrow, like 2 to
Yeah.
3 feet. So they're not going to grab you whenever you're walking in the door. Nice evergreen. We also got a compact Japanese holly, which has a really small leaf to it. These are actually kind of topiaried into kind of cones a little bit.
I thought it was a boxwood when they came in, but then you look at them closer, you're going, that's deeper, richer, greener. It's nicer. It's got berries. It's kind of, that's pretty cool.
It's very, very pretty. And then we also got some colonnades. We got ruby colonnade and emerald colonnade. So these get tall. They're going to get upwards of 10 feet over time.
Yeah.
But they have a really kind of soft leaf to them. They don't have that kind of prickly leaf that you're used to on a holly. These are very soft, kind of oval shaped. Very, very attractive.
So hollies will grow, they have a waxy leaf to them, which makes them very efficient on their water use, which makes them very tough. They just aren't going to like the dryness of June, but if you put them in a morning, afternoon, or shaded area, they're going to thrive for years to come. Well, now we are officially out of time. So Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners, don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Autumn is the most beautiful time of the year in the mountains, and Waters Garden Center has the brightest trees.
We've collected 700 hardy trees, including maple, aspen, ash, and oak.
Each is ready to plant, so you can enjoy brilliant fall foliage in your yard.
Shop online at top10trees.com or visit us in Prescott.
Trees are brighter at Waters Garden Center in Prescott and online at top10trees.com. You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. additional shows of this podcast, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show with Ken Lain. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So I've had quite a few customers come in this week complaining about deer, javelina, rabbits, pack rats. Oh my gosh, the animal pressure is on right now. So I thought I'd give you a list or some of the top plants that the animals kind of guaranteed they're going to leave alone. You'll just see this list growing in your neighborhood, so you know they're not going to bother. You know, if they don't bother in your neighbor's yard, they're not going to bother in yours. And so I give you a quick lesson. A lot of the autumn colors, a lot of the autumn, the things you're planting now are not bothered by the animals. So now obviously there's vegetables. They're going to like all of those. I mean, if it's a vegetable, they're going to eat it. If you like it, so are they. So the fruit trees, they're going to like it. So you got to watch that one. But for landscape plants, it's a little bit easier. So that front yard area, there's plants you can put out there. They don't bother. If you've got plants that you want to have where they're going to go after them, like tomatoes and broccoli and cauliflower and lettuce and spinach, and they're going to like all those. You'll have to protect them. You fence them out or keep them out of that area, or have a space or up on a deck, some way to keep the vermin out of them. But if it's a landscape plant, trees, I mean, sycamores, plants, animals don't eat those. Maples, especially the blaze maples. There's this beautiful red maple. They don't bother that. I don't know why. They look delicious, but they just seem to leave them alone. All of your evergreens, the conifers, all the conifers, they'll leave alone. So that's from Arizona cypress to Colorado spruce to Austrian pines, junipers, cypress, cedars. They don't bother any of those. Juniper's a little bit that tender new growth sometimes, but generally you can put them out there. They're not going to bother them. If there's anything else, anything in the yard for them to eat, they would rather eat that than they would a conifer, a needled type of evergreen tree. So you're probably good to go. The latest color you're seeing out, the newest one, you saw sumacs starting to go into color this week. So sumacs, they're just there's something about them. They're growing out there in the wild. They know, don't eat sumac or I'll get sick to my stomach. So they leave those alone. There's quite a few different tiger eye sumacs, staghorn sumacs, trilobata sumac. They're all the same family. They're all cousins. They're not going to eat any of them. So they're all used to, the animals just know, don't bother those. Most of the grasses, so pampas grass, that real big, beautiful, glorious pampas grass, they don't bother that. Now, you think they would eat a grass, but they don't. And it goes all the way down to deer grass, miscanthus, all of these are native-y kind of grasses. They don't bother. Bear grass. So the bear grass that grows wild out in the valley areas, Chino Valley, Paulden, Prescott Valley, of course, Dewey, that wild grass, they don't bother. Whether it's an antelope, a deer, a javelina, they're not going to go eat that particular plant. So you can plant that with confidence and not worry about that herd of 15 javelina coming and clearing out everything. Now, they might come and dig things up. They like nice, loose soil. So they're interested in that plant when you put it out there. Now, this is their living room. I mean, they notice any difference. So you're going to go, oh, let's go. Hey, buddy. Hey, Dave, let's go over there and check this thing out. Let's see what's going on over there. And so they'll kind of root around and go, oh, no, I don't like sumacs. Do you? No. Let's keep going. Let's go down the neighbor's yard and see if we can eat their pumpkins. So they're doing that. So they'll check it out though, to see if they don't like it. Some of your flowers are the same way. So a lot of flowers, like mums, animals don't bother mums. Sometimes they'll eat the flowers off, but generally, like I've got javelina in front of my office here at the garden center. It's glorious right now. Javelina and deer just roam up and down the street. In fact, this fence around the garden center is to keep people out and mainly animals out. And so that if we leave a gate open, there will be javelina in the nursery, knocking everything over, eating, trying, tasting everything. And so it's to keep them out. So I've got mums right here where I know I can see the footprints, and they're not eating my mums. And so for you, that's probably the same way. Same with euphorbia. There's a couple different colors, euphorbia, or there's three different varieties, I think, at the garden center currently. Gopher plant, um, what is it? Rainbow ascot euphorbia, and there's a new kind of burgundy colored euphorbia. These are nice evergreen perennials. They grow about knee high, not all of them, about just knee high or a little bit below. They've got different colored foliage, typically a yellow kind of flowery kind of thing. But there's a sap in euphorbia that it just makes your mouth go numb. And so they start nibbling on it, and then they go, oh, I can't feel my mouth. What's going on here? And so they quickly stop eating it. And they just learn, don't taste that when it's nasty. You're going to need to find some water after this to rinse your mouth out. And so they just know that that plant has created over many lifetimes a way to defend itself through the sap. If you break off a branch of this, much like a poinsettia, has that white, milky sap to it. That's an indication that that plant is defending itself through its sap, nasty tasting sap. Lots of beautiful echinacea right now. Echinacea is this bright, it's kind of like a sunflower, but you have a lot more choice of colors. Again, it gets about knee high, maybe a little bit shorter, 18, 24 inches. Have these big sunflowery kind of, but it comes in orange and green and yellow and purple, lots of colors. But you'll notice with that particular flower, it's got a texture to the bottom of the leaf, and it's got a texture spine up and down the stem of that flower. There, it's not using its sap, it's using its texture of its foliage. So when you eat that, you kind of, those hairs get stuck in your throat, and they kind of go, oh man, I can't eat any more of this. Oh, it's terrible. And so it's a good wild flower that you can put out there that the animals are going to leave alone. So you can put a mixture, you can put a nice garden out there. It's probably not going to be a cottage garden. You might have 10 varieties of flowers to make a beautiful flower bed, but you'll commit to more units of the things you can grow that the animals aren't going to eat. So there's a strategy to it. That's where we can really help you out. Take a picture of your garden, get a quick measurement, and we can walk you through and go, 99% chance, or at least 90% chance, animals are going to leave this palette mix alone. I can tell you they do like pansies. They love kale. So these real pretty autumn flowers you can plant now. You plant them and they bloom like crazy right through winter. The negative, the flowers are edible. So you can harvest pansies and violas, put them on salads, impress your friends. They're colorful. They're pretty, but animals like them too. So you want to go to more of the euphorbias, the asters, the phlox, the echinaceas. They don't eat those. So there is a mixture of plants. The shrubs, you're into pampas grass. Anything that has cotoneaster. There's probably 6 different types of cotoneaster. Some are native, some think they're native, but all of them grow here and the animals don't bother them. And so you're good to go with those. Junipers, generally they leave those alone. They'd rather eat anything besides that. Not all grasses, but a lot of grasses. I'd say 5 or 6. So deer grass, miscanthus, switchgrass, pampas grass, they're not going to bother those. And then sumacs, many of your natives, I would say yuccas, agaves. There's several over there that are just beautiful. Some in bloom. We got a new beautiful yellow yucca that's just really striking, very unusual. And the hummingbirds love those, but the animals seem to leave them alone. They don't nibble on them. So there's a list of things that you can have that plant. And if you're worried about animals taking over and eating, if your neighbors are feeding the deer, you're going to have deer walking in front of your house. You need plants that they aren't going to nibble on as they walk through. That's the list you're going with. Most of your evergreens, so pine, spruce, cypress, cedar, firs, they don't eat. So you can put those with confidence. They're not going Not going to bother nibbling on those for you. I should go maybe maybe next segment. I can explain the differences between all the evergreens and why some are better than others. But right now, we are out of time. I could keep going with this. This is one if you need help, come talk with us. We'll show you which ones to focus on and which ones kind of shy away from, because they'll probably eat that arborvitae, but they won't the juniper. Be right back after this.
Prescott Blaze maple is the fastest local tree with brilliant red foliage.
Prescott Blaze maples grow 3 feet each year. That's fast.
Prescott Blaze maples are perfect for patios or any place a shade tree is needed.
We have a limited number of huge, instant Prescott Blaze maples, but the $249 size is exceptionally nice.
The maples are brighter in Prescott at Waters Garden Center.
Or shop online at top10trees.com.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Thanks for tuning in to the Top 10 Garden Show. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So as you're looking at plants, there's basically a juniper is a juniper is a juniper, but not really. A cypress is a cypress is a cypress, not really. A fruit tree is a fruit tree is a fruit, not even close. Some plants are started by seed, and they're cheaper to do by seed. So they come up fast. 5 years later, you got a tree you can actually sell at the nursery. It's a plum. The problem is when you start by seed, each seed's going to be uniquely different. There's no consistency. So it'll be just like a sea of people. Each and every one of them will be completely different. Some tall, some short, some wide, some thin, some produce like crazy, some don't. Some actually produce small fruits, some big flowers, small flowers. Some grow wispy and thin and crooked, and some grow, some grow nice and chubby and full. Out of all the plants, when you're walking through a forest and you see one, you go, whoa, that one is obviously prettier than all the others. Just like people, you kind of go, wow, that's just beautiful. And so we'll take that plant, and instead of taking seed from that plant, yes, there's propensity to have more beautiful plants coming from the seed of that particular plant. But if you could take a nice, good, let's say Arizona cypress, a nice, good, strong root structure, and then take a cutting off the very perfect, the beautiful, just like gorgeous tree. You take a cutting off that, and now you've got an exact clone. And so every single tree will look exactly like its parent. So every one will grow up exactly the same. This is really important if you have a specimen plant. You don't want variations, and you're 10 years in, you kind of go, whoa, that plant was sort of off looking when I put it in. I thought it would fill out and be nicer, but it just keeps getting uglier. That's the reason. It was started by seed, not by cuttings. If you're doing a hedgerow, you want everything to be exactly the same. You don't want a bunch of, some are big, some are small, some are thin, you want them to be clones. You want them to be exact copies so they all grow exactly the same in that particular part of the yard. This is important. You kind of want clones of things. Fruit trees. Oh, for the love of gardening, you just don't want a tree started by a peach seed. It's fun to do it in your own yard, but if you want an Alberta peach with big, juicy peaches that just melt in your mouth, there's one out there that's just over the top. It's better than the others. The fruits are better, sweeter, stronger. You want a cutting from that, and you want to grow an exact copy of that in your own yard. So you do want a grafted type of fruit tree, not a one started by seed. So the boxers will typically have seed grown because they're cheaper to do it that way. You just don't have consistency, but they're cheaper. Your garden centers are going to have a preferred variety. They're going to have clones, exact copies. And that's why our juniper trees don't cause allergies, because we're just breeding the females. The males are the ones that have all the pollen. The females have the beautiful berries. They're luscious, they're full, they're glorious, and they don't cause allergy issues. the males do. So we can control that by taking just cuttings. Whereas if we were to do seeds, we just take the berry, just put 1,000 of them out there and have them grow over 5 years. And then we bring them in and go, there, we got a cheap juniper for you. Problem is your allergies will go crazy. They'll have inconsistency. You just won't have that premier, better looking. You got $1 million house. You don't want cheap plants. You need consistent, beautiful, just consistency. You want to know what you're putting in there. If you put an orchard in, you're not going to get fruit for 5 to 7 years on an orchard by seed. And so you kind of want to know, I don't want to wait 5 years and go, oh, I hate this plum. It's terrible. This apple's awful. Oh my gosh. You want to know, I want a Granny Smith. I want it to be green. I want to be able to take that and make the best pies you've ever tasted. That's what I want. And then you get that by having grafts. And that's what you're going to find at a independent garden center, or the premier, better quality types of fruits, trees, shrubs. That's it for this show. Throughout the week, Lisa and I camp out here at Waters Garden Center, and we love talking to fans of the show.
Waters companion plants that grow well together are blaze maple, burning bush, spicy mums, glamour kale, and red wall creeper.
Waters' red wall creeper is specially selected to dress up those miles of stockade fence.
A mountain vine with rich green foliage turns fire engine red through autumn.
Waters' native vines are and both deer and rabbit proof.
You'll find the showiest vines here at Waters Garden Center.
Google, give me directions to Waters Garden Center.
If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success, and landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.